The first owner I worked with was a guy called Syd Fisher from Australia. He was pretty famous in terms of offshore sailing. He had a lot of boats called ragamuffin, and he came from a career in surf boat rowing in Australia, but also playing rugby and rugby league. He was a very, very tough man, very difficult to work with, but he gave the opportunity to people. And if I look back at other people that were given the opportunity, I was very lucky at that time. I mean, I basically came out of high school and he gave me the chance to start sailing on Ragamuffin, one of his boats.
Yes.
And because of that, that was the door opening to the America's Cup. And initially, Syd wanted to do a big America's Cup challenge in 2000 in New Zealand. He had already done America's Cups. He had done in the 12 meters. He had done it in '95, but he couldn't raise the sponsorship to do a big campaign. And so he said, "Look, I have an old boat from '95, and the boat came in last place. It was called Sydney '95. He said, I have an old boat here. I've paid the entry fee for New Zealand, and the only way to get the entry fee back was to do the first race. So he said, okay, you can take that old boat, you can get a young team, you have to go and find some sponsors. You go to New Zealand, you do the first race, and then we come home because I want to get the money." And I said, great, let's do it. But what happened was we got the team, we worked on the old boat from '95. We found the sponsor for the shipping, so we shipped the boat. We found 3 other sponsors to sponsor the team. And once we started the race, Syd, we were racing well, even though we're in an old boat. And Syd saw that and he said, okay, you can finish the round robin. And then after we finished the round robin, he said, okay, do the second round robin. And that, because of that, that gave the opportunity to me and so many other young guys in the team, let's say their first step into launching careers in the America's Cup. So without him, I don't think I would be in the America's Cup. The second America's Cup was with One World Challenge, which was started by a guy named Craig McCaw from Seattle. He comes from a big telecommunications background, a great guy. Even then, very early on, he was really thoughtful for the environment, and that was an important part, which in those days was a real breakthrough. You know, he really wanted to associate the campaign with environmental and the ocean. But that was my first real campaign, where I got to work with, you know, Peter Gilmore, a lot of guys who had been with Team New Zealand in the 2000 America's Cup, and some other incredible sailors and designers, engineers. So for myself and I think 4 other young Australian guys, we got to join this first big team, and it was incredible. I mean, it was just, I couldn't believe. And every day I woke up, I had to pinch myself and say, is this real? Like, or am I dreaming? Because it was just, I loved every single minute of it. It was fantastic. I mean, we were the young guys. I think I was the youngest guy in the team. And Peter Gilmore, I already knew from match racing, and I knew a lot of the other New Zealand guys as well, because they were in Team New Zealand. We had some great American sailors, a really good mix. But in that campaign, we had 2 sailing teams because we would do 2-boat testing and we would do 2-boat racing, and it was incredible. It was like a dream. Every day you got to go, you got to train in the gym with the team. You would spend all day, and it was, instantly I knew this is what I would like to do. Yeah, 2007 was an amazing campaign. I remember after the America's Cup in New Zealand in 2003, I had some offers from other teams, and one of the offers was from Francesco De Angelis, who got in touch with me and asked would I consider, along with my other Australian teammates, joining Luna Rossa. And I remember flying to Milan and meeting Francesco, meeting Patrizio, and it just felt right to me. It felt like the right team. And then that was my first experience with Italy, but more the Italian people, and especially the Italian fans. And it was interesting because I had found with my sailing career outside of the America's Cup, I had more success racing in Italy than anywhere else. And I don't know why, but it just happened. And so for me, I've always felt comfortable and really somewhat attached to Italy. I always enjoyed visiting and racing and all the match racing and different competitions. But my father reminded me a few times that you always seem to do well when you're racing in Italy. So yeah, that campaign was an amazing campaign, and Torben Grail was a guy that I raced with, and we had an incredible sailing team, design, engineering, shore team, and it was, I think Valencia, there was maybe 12 teams. The atmosphere was fantastic. Yeah, 2010, so after the 2007 America's Cup, Larry Ellison and Russell Coutts asked if I would join with their team. And at that stage, we thought it would be another America's Cup like 2007 with the same boat. But after a few things happened, all of a sudden, we were into this deed of gift race, and the boats, I mean, they were boats of what you would dream about, because there was nothing like what was being designed, drawn, ultimately what was built. It was just unbelievable. And it was, again, just one of those campaigns where you think about, as an athlete, to get the opportunity to be involved in something like that, where the engineering and the concept is so extreme, I was so lucky to have the opportunity to do that. And it was just an absolutely incredible boat. I mean, it was like a monster. It was so big. It took so many people to do the maintenance, design, build. It was, logistically, it was a challenge. We had this huge wing. It was the biggest wing ever built in the world, including aerospace, the aviation industry. I mean, that boat with the wing, you couldn't go under the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. It's too big. When you look back at that project, I don't know how we did it, honestly. How we were able to do that. Yeah, 2013 was I think one of the big jumps in the sport. 2010 it opened everyone's mind to multi-hulls, and to technology and extreme engineering. But 2013 really showed foiling, because 2010 there was no foiling. We did have multi-hulls, we did have a wing sail on the Oracle trimaran, but 2013 really had everything. I mean, and at the beginning, I'm not sure anyone really thought we would be foiling or we would be flying. We knew we would be sailing fast on the catamarans. We knew we would have the wing sail, which was very, very powerful and quite a big step in terms of technology and construction. But at the beginning of the campaign, I don't think anyone thought the boats would be flying above the water. And the Kiwis were really the first to really consider that as a possibility. And then ultimately at the end, I think the big breakthrough for Oracle was that while all of the boats in that America's Cup were able to fly downwind, no one could fly upwind. And then finally, luckily, by about the middle of the America's Cup, we learnt how to fly our boat upwind. And that was really what allowed us to come back and win. Honestly, I didn't have to say anything because they were great people. And that's the one thing I've learned in all of these America's Cups is the most important, the first ingredient. If you don't get that right, you won't win. And that is the people. You really have to have great people, and they have to have the attitude of the team is number one, and you put yourself as second. So the team is always a priority. That's easier to say. That, you know, and because everyone has an ego, and and in an emotional moment, it's hard sometimes to put yourself second. But the best teams and the best people I've worked with have always had the ability to put themselves second and the team first. But I remember during that time, the campaign was a very difficult campaign. I made some big mistakes in that we had a huge capsize in our first boat. We destroyed the boat. We were lucky not to kill anyone. And we were, I tell people, I was trying to run before I could walk. And we were trying to go too quickly in learning how to sail the boat at the time. And so I made a big mistake and we crashed the boat, and we were dragged offshore in the night, and we had to come back, and there wasn't much time left before the race, and we had to build an entirely new boat. We lost a lot of training. Anyway, the point was, it put the team in a very difficult situation, and we got to see, would the people blame each other? I mean, I really held myself responsible for what happened on that day. Or would they say, okay guys, we made a mistake here. How do we learn from the mistake? Because we could use this to get stronger as a team. And that's what the team decided to do. So then we went through that, and we recovered, and the team, you know, we all went forwards. Then we got to the racing. And obviously we had missed a lot of time because of this mistake. But we knew that the people were going to stick together, because we'd seen when we had the big mistake, well, I had the big mistake in the crash, that the team didn't split. They became tight and stronger. So we knew, well, guys, if we can do that, we can still do this. And I think the biggest thing was that never giving up, but every day just focusing on winning one race. We didn't have to win 8 races. You know, all we had to do, we kept saying, let's just focus all of our energy on just winning one race. And we would win one race, and then we would come back the next day and say, let's focus on winning another race. Or if there were 2 races that day, let's win the first race. Okay, we won the first race, Now let's win the next one. And that was the story. Plus, we were always trying to develop the boat and make it faster and learn. We were very aggressive. We were not conservative, and we were taking risk. We were taking a lot of risk, but it was, yeah, it felt like a marathon. Yeah, we made some changes to the boat. We also made changes to the crew. I mean, at the time when we started out, John Kostecki was the tactician, who was one of the best sailors I've ever sailed with. Amazing sailor. But we decided to make a change. We brought Ben Ainsley in as a tactician. At that time, Ben was steering our other AC-72 because we had two sailing teams. And up until that point, Ben and I had been competitors, just fight every day, just wanting to beat one another, which is natural. But this was the first time we had become, let's say, teammates in that we were going to work together to try and win. It took some time. I remember the first race we did with Ben, we still lost the race. But the important part was we were learning as a team, and we were getting stronger, and we were getting closer to being able to foil upwind, to learn techniques, how to use the boat, how to sail it. The issue was we didn't have much time. And one of the big moments was when we played what we call a card. You're allowed to have a day off. And we said, okay, we're going to have a day off. The other team did not sail on the day off, and we spent the whole day practicing foiling upwind. And that to me was a very important part in the America's Cup series. Yeah, 2017 we were going for 3 America's Cup wins in a row. And we were in Bermuda, and I think ultimately my summary from that campaign was we, and especially myself, we became too conservative, almost defensive. If I think about 2010, if I think about 2013, we were pushing, you know, and we were on the offense, we were attacking, you know, and we were constantly pushing right to the edge. I felt like I made the mistake in 2013 to go more defensive mode and not pushing things. So that was a big mistake that I hold myself responsible for, of making in the team. And I felt the Kiwis, they were like we were in 2010 and in 2013, in that they were really pushing themselves, technology, design decisions. They incorporated the use of a simulator. They were the first to really adopt the simulator technology. That meant they didn't have to go sailing to learn about different foils or rudders or wings. So that I thought was a real breakthrough, but ultimately I was too conservative in that America's Cup. Yeah, I mean, after we had really 2 campaigns, well, 3 campaigns of multi-hulls with 2010, but 2013, 2017 were full foiling catamarans, especially 2017, where even the tacking, the jibing, everything was foiling. I mean, the goal then was to do the whole race flying, never to touch the water. After Team New Zealand won, we didn't know what they would do with the boat. But when we saw the design of a monohull, but a foiling monohull, I was actually really excited, because it was like it was going full circle, you know, started in the monohull, we went to multi-hull, the multi-hull was flying, and now we come back to the monohull, but now the monohull's flying. And so for me, it was a really exciting concept. Yeah, I think in 2021 that Team New Zealand was a step above all of the other challenges, in that I felt like we did a good job in the light winds. I thought we had a very powerful boat that could be competitive in the light winds. And I thought American Magic had a boat that was very competitive in the stronger winds, the middle winds, where Team New Zealand had a boat that was strong everywhere. And they did a very, very good campaign. I thought we raced very well in the America's Cup final in 2021 against a much faster boat, but ultimately Team New Zealand did a much better job of the campaign than we did. Yeah, look, the weather and meteorology is so big in America's Cup programs, because the first thing you do when you design a boat is you say, where is the race? We need to know what the conditions are, because that will play a big part in the design of the boat, the size of the foils, if it's a monohull, the hull shape, etc. The challenge today, I believe, in today's world, is that when you do a big study, let's say a 10 or 20-year study of an area, the average is quite different, in that the weather is really changing now. You know, it used to be that every summer you would get consistent conditions, but I think now, as we see, it's very different. The winters can be very different, the summers can be different. So I believe it's very challenging now to use, let's say, a historical study of weather to give you an average of conditions. I think if you really want to win the America's Cup, you have to have a boat that is good in all of the conditions. You cannot have a weakness. And this America's Cup series, when you look at the fleet of boats now, I believe they are much closer. In that, if I look at New Zealand, the British, ourselves, the Americans, etc., all of the teams, the boats are much more similar in terms of performance, much more similar in terms of the concepts, because everyone knows you need to be able to perform in the very light winds or in not big waves. But we all know we can get big waves and a lot of wind in Barcelona, so you have to be able to have the entire package. As a kid growing up in Australia, there were two big things in sailing. One was Australia 2, winning in 1983. I was very young then. But the second big moment for the country, not just sailors, is the Sydney to Hobart race, because it is on the day after Christmas, and it's like a legendary race. So as a kid, it was something I always wanted to do. With Syd Fisher, I got the opportunity, my first one in '98, which was a very rough one with a big storm. And then a few opportunities after that time. But I was fortunate to win it a couple of times on Comanche. And on one of those victories, the weather was so good and the team really did a great job. We were able to set the record for the fastest time from Sydney to Hobart, which still is standing today. I've really been in Cagliari the last 7 years, over the last two campaigns, and I literally fell in love with Sardinia. I mean, it's probably one of the best parts about doing campaigns, is that you get to experience different locations and different cultures. It's just like a paradise there. It's, I mean, also I was very fortunate that I got to meet some local people as well, outside of the America's Cup, who became very, very close friends. But the lifestyle, I mean, man, you know, we would be doing our America's Cup training. We would be in the mountains hiking. We would be surfing, wing foiling. I mean, it was just, for me, it was paradise as someone that likes sport and being active. But also, I mean, the culture, the food is so good. The thing I really noticed was when I went early on with a friend of mine, and he took me to dinner with his family, and I could see how important the family is, in that the young babies were there all the way up to the great-grandmother and the great-grandfather. And they would make sure regularly they would all get together for a meal. And that really I liked. And when I think about Luna Rossa, it's always been this family, and that's something that I thought Patrizio, Marco, etc. have always done a very good job of making it feel like a family atmosphere. But I feel like Sardinia I can see why the people there are so, it's hard to put a word, but they're just so...
They live longer.
They live longer, and I know why now. Yeah, Sardinia is a place very special to me. Yeah, I think before, the physical effort really wasn't huge, because at that point there were, strong guys clearly doing the grinding, etc. But for the rest, there was really so many people on the boat that there was almost like there was too many people and not as many roles. Now, when you look at the boats, they're undermanned in that you really have to multitask, and you have to have very, very good athletes, but you have to have the ability now to really think under stress, make decisions very quickly. But for a lot of the guys, they have to be able to think at exhaustion, in that they're going at max heart rate, and because you're undermanned, everyone has a lot of roles to play and functions to perform. So I believe now that the sport really is at the top in terms of when I look at Saill GP or America's Cup, where you can't just be a great sailor, you need to be a great athlete as well. And you can't just be a great athlete, you also need to be someone that is a good sailor, but you have to be an athlete that can make decisions under pressure and also at times under exhaustion.